Alright, what's up, yins, guys? In listening to this video, what I'm trying to bring you here is also inspired by with a quote that comes to mind, one of my favorite quotes about individuals like this that we had to deal with, from Henry Rollins. Any of these guys ever listened to Henry Rollins stuff? He talked about a particular scenario about, he made reference to some scenario, I guess, where he dealt with, quote, some guy with a beer belly and an attitude giving him grief. I mean, so that's what this video is all about. Whether you watch the whole thing or not, you don't read the definition that I type underneath and whatever the hell. And if not, it will, you know. Alright, what's up, yins, guys? Time for another video, and I already had a video like this, but I decided to redo it because I over-talked it on a lot of aspects, and I want to do it over, but I can go on and on too much and jump subjects in my sarcasms instead of saving the shit for another video. But I'm going to tell you something that a lot of us like to make fun of. Before we had the internet and all these crazy gender issues like you see on the cringy shit on YouTube about the so-called toxic masculinity, how everything is toxic masculinity now. Those crackpots that are always saying shit. I'm going to take you back to something other kind of overly pseudo, whatever you call them, the pseudo-man and the overly manliness that we used to like to make fun of. Some of us, and a lot of you guys watching, even younger than me or maybe a little older than me, probably dealt with this. This is a type of, before you had that bullshit you're talking about now, that it's just a joke. We had the kind of goofy-ass manliness, how you got a particular type of dude that damn near everybody in every workplace encountered. But yet, in one sense, they're getting to be kind of a dinosaur now, but they've kind of evolved. The other generations have evolved. But I would talk about the classic type that, and matter of fact, any of those ones that chicks out there that identify as a man or whatever in that gender shit, if they want to make fun of this type of manliness, so that I can laugh along with them and do a parody like in a comedian way instead of taking their issues seriously, I'd welcome it. But they don't have a sense of humor. But anyway, before that shit ever was even conceived, like as far as internet, okay, the typical, I'm talking about the typical overly manly man, the one, you ever get those ones that say a lot of times in a lot of workplaces, or maybe even when you're young and a teenager, you had some relatives that like that, or some other person that was like that always has to be, they're the know-it-all, they're the authority, just because they try to make themselves appear to be more manly by making their voice deeper and always, they're always right, they know it all, and they're also the boss of you or everybody else, except for the ones that entertain their bullshit. And they also have, for example, everything they say is right just because they're doing their manly voice, and they're everything about their stature and the way they look is almost like, for example, you have some short sleeve collared shirt, right, when you're younger. Whether you were a chubby kid or skinny kid, you were a nerd or a dork. But when these guys are older, who knows if they were a nerd or a dork when they were younger, you know, that nerd or dork shirt on one of these people is like a man shirt. You know, they always wearing usually a really shitty short sleeve collar shirt, a shitty looking, some of them may have had and being bitter because they may have be paying child support that maybe their second wife or whatever, and walk around with a beard, a big belly, and a really, what used to be the dork shirt is their man shirt. That kind of dress, that's why I was almost saying some aspect of them are almost a dinosaur, but there's other generations of them. And I read a book called The BS Syndrome that talks a little bit about, you know, the part of it is like the macho man, but there was the talking about the manliness. The guy always has to appear with voice deeper and the know-it-all. Their whole chapters on that. And a lot of their traits too. For example, you work next to some of them. Instead of the people that try to work or do stuff too erratically to try to be badass, which there ain't nothing wrong with, don't max themselves out. This kind of guy that's always putting people down, talking down to people, always thinks he's even the boss, go up and bossing people around, telling people what to do. They also like to do that, but they also, one of their traits, along with doing that, are one of their ways of avoiding work. They don't do no work when they're not. For example, one of the things they're bullshitting with the other men in a manly voice, where some of them are supposed to be working. You know, it's almost like you hear them in the sidelines there. It's almost like too much, like it's like barely audible, and almost like you want to have a buddy with you that knows their language and a translator. And when they're bitching about something, get your buddy that's like a translator to their language. And hey, what's he aping about? You know, because they are almost apish in a way. And like, for example, when and it's unlike the guy that's maybe working too erratically, you know what I mean, to show he means business. The way they work and the way they walk, it's to cover up, to have a facade concealing the fact that maybe they're too lazy to even walk, let alone work, or maybe drinking too much beer before the workday starts and before even going to bed in time, you know what I mean, tipping the bottle too much, you know what I mean, whatever the hell. And doing a little work as possible, instead of the guy that works like really erratically, try to conceal their laziness like they're working hard, and they're not working hard, that they're hardly working. And always telling people what to do and bossing other people. When they're doing a little working, for example, instead of working erratically, okay, you ready for this? Like, the way they walk to cover the fact that they're too lazy to even walk, let alone work. Instead of working hard, they hardly work and act like they're working hard. Do work as slow as possible. The way they walk and the way they work. The elbows, the manly shoulder thing, the beer belly, the manly, like, you know, like cover the fact that they're too lazy to walk. And when you're just walking right into a workplace, even people like you over there, maybe some of you kids don't even like me, you know, to tolerate my videos. You got a good noodle. It could hold a lot of information, right? And you can move a few boxes, and you can do better. You guys can do better than these persons. For example, man, like, for just walking slow and moseying looks like power walking to these kind of guys. Like, they're too lazy to walk or too lazy to work. They're working and they're walking, like, to cover up the laziness in some cases. Like, when they're walking, like, kind of like stocky, like in the beer belly going on. They usually sometimes got some kind of long mustache going on, got some kind of like beard, you know what I mean, and they're chewed tobacco or whatever the hell, you know, and every movement, it's like walk as slow as possible to hide the fact that they're walking like a disabled old man, try to cover up by like they're walking manly. And then when they're trying to work manly as slow as possible, people like you or me, even somebody watching that don't even like me, you know what I mean, I have no doubt you can just boxes or whatever and just boom and then when they're not working, they're like avoiding work by bullshitting with people, like, and acting, complaining in a manly type way. Complain about somebody else in a manly kind of voice. If they're not telling people what to do in a manly voice, they're complaining about somebody else that does everything better than them in a manly voice or whatever. And they're known to, when they bring up unions and they basically act like everybody else is lazy in a manly voice, you know, and when they talk about unions and all that, and cover up their laziness. Don't get me wrong when I say this, I don't want anybody to work for 50 cents a day, you know what I mean, either. But you get these ones that they want the union, that they go overdo it, but they use it for a smokescreen for their laziness, and they think that like they should have $150 an hour to do hardly nothing. 2 hour smoke break, 4 hour lunch, and if you're on say even if you're on overtime days, I don't know, I'm being sarcastic. 2 hour smoke break, a 4 hour lunch, and a half hour of work maybe. Oh, and whatever medical benefits is not enough. Talk real. When some of these that overdo it when they talk about the union, blah, blah, blah. And these are the kind of guys that talk about unions because they're lazy, and you got everything else, and very macho about workman's comp or whatever too. Supposed to be manly and tough, right, and everything else. What little work they do, oh, I hurt my back and all that. And to cover up, act like they're not. Try to talk and act manly tough when they talk about, I hit my back. I throw up a letter. To that workman's comp, and to cover up that maybe they're just, I don't know, lazy and stupid at the same time, and it's good material to talk about on a stage like the late George Carlin or even Henry Rollins, or the kind of shit that, not saying this to be hating on anybody that identifies as another gender, but some of these ones that, well, whether he's a tomboy like that played football with the rest of the boys when we went to school with, when we didn't have all the bullshit, right? Which there was nothing wrong with that, right? You get one of these now that I would want to say without hating, that today's girl that doesn't want to be a girl, wants to identify a man. Not to hate, but I also would say, well, make themselves useful by making fun of this kind of manliness, the kind of the way we see it, without giving a damn about whether we give a damn about a type of this toxic masculinity shit that we didn't even have back in the days where we tolerate the girls back when we were young playing football with the boys, you know what I mean? But if some of them other ones that identify as a dude or whatever, quit being so cringy and just have a sense of humor, maybe, dress a certain way, you know what I mean? Make fun of these kind of people that some of us make fun of, right? And I, for one, would laugh, you know what I mean? I saw one on YouTube, I'd give him a thumbs up just to the hell of it, you know what I mean? But yeah, this toxic masculinity stuff that everybody talks to, these TikTok cringe videos or whatever the heck, that YouTuber named, ex-military guy YouTuber named Odin's Man, he does videos on, him and other people do videos on these cringe compilations, but I didn't want to use this video talking about that shit, but anyway, you get before I end this video, you get the concept, anyone out there in a different age group, right? The aspect of the so manly man, there was a classic part of it, that stupid manly man that talked down to people. Part of the way they dress or their appearance, some of them are a dinosaur in some respect, but some of them survive in a slightly various form. They have evolved a little bit. So instead of, that's what I wanted to bring to you, instead of that bullshit that you're hearing, the cringy bullshit that you're hearing about toxic masculinity, I figure I'd bring you something to laugh at like that. Because the rest of us know all about that shit. The Mr. Manly, Mr. voice, just because they have a voice that they're right about everything, they can talk down to everybody, and they're the boss of everybody, and they even know more than the boss over in the workplace. Yeah, complain of. They may use the manly voice to complain about everything, and everything about the way they walk, the laziness of the way they walk and work. The elbows acting like they're working hard, and then when you're doing better than them, it's almost like have something to say, like that you're making them look bad, or you're doing something wrong. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of other people on YouTube that probably go on the stage and do comedian thing and actually people laugh better than me, you know what I'm saying? I can, if I'm lucky, I can probably pull it off doing it not so much like a comedian per se, more like the way Henry Rollins does it, and some people laugh a little bit, but do it like it's a spoken word more than a, as long as I get to the point, as more like leaning towards spoken word with a little bit of comedy. But if I don't call myself comedy, it's like sarcasm. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's just some of the funniest shit there. People did you had to deal with, you know.